Welcome back, everybody, to the Classic Rock Podcast. And coming up in this edition, I'm going to be talking to Kee Marcello, yes, the former Europe man, about his new band and album. It's called Out of This World, and it's a glorious return to that melodic rock sound of the 1980s. If you haven't heard it, it is very good, and we're going to be playing tracks from that a little bit later on. So, Out of This World resurrects a musical genre we thought was lost forever. Now, that was a quote from the press release. Now, you've done it in a lot of style here, because this is a fabulous debut album.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Well, I think we really are the great white hope for melodic rock. I mean, a genre that hopelessly but disappeared after grunge, basically, which was so unfair since grunge lasted for about 5 minutes, didn't it? After about a year, nobody wanted to be called grunge after a year. Then it was gone. So it was such a waste. It changed the entire dynamics of the recording industry, and it took many years for it to recover, I think. But now genres are a different thing altogether. Back then, I mean, before the 80s, hard rock was more an underground thing, you know, and obviously became mainstream with the 80s and the hair bands, and then back to underground again. But now I can see fans that are in their 20s picking up my music just because they find them on Spotify or iTunes or Amazon and check it out.
This is a big positive, isn't it, really, for some bands, not for everybody. I understand the issues with payment to artists on some of these platforms, but the ability to just dip back into a catalogue like yours, for instance, and do what I was doing yesterday, which was looking back and playing Easy Action, you know, from 40 years ago.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and these digital formats makes it possible and very easy to get into this music. So I'm speaking to my promotion people, and they get fan mails from very young people, you know, saying, what is this new musical style? I mean, they're referring to my solo album, which is AOR, but to them it's new because music hasn't really developed the last 10 years, I would say. It's pop music is doing pretty much the same thing. Nowadays it's just some programmed drums and a very loud voice, and so the shape of pop hasn't been getting a long way the past 10 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, Out of This World, your first album since Key of Hearts a couple of years ago, 2017, which was in itself pretty well received all round. Tommy Hart on vocals, Ken Sandin on the bass, they remain.
Yeah.
What was the objective when you put this project together? How were you going to differentiate the sound between the Key of Hearts and this new project, Out of This World?
Yeah, while Key of Hearts started off as a project, just that, I mean, the record label, which I was on as a solo artist at the time, asked me if I wanted to play the guitar on the Tommy Hart solo album. And I thought that was a great idea because I just finished building my studio in my house. I had a big studio before, but I got rid of it in 2018. So it would be a great opportunity for me to try out my amps and the new rig, basically, in my house. So I said yes. And after a while, it became obvious to me that the record company were trying to sell this as a band. That's why a lot of people think the Key of Hearts is a band, but it was not. They labeled it as a band. Obviously, they had more to gain if it looked like the band, but it really wasn't. And I didn't write any of the music. Tommy wrote some lyrics, I think. If that would have been a band I participated in, I would have been gone about it completely differently. I mean, I'd like to produce and write songs and all that, and I did nothing of that of Key of Hearts. Then when we decided to start Out of This World, obviously I wanted Darby Todd playing the drums first of all. We already had Ken Sandin, and Darby and Ken and I go way back, so it was definitely something we needed in the band, I felt. Darby, who played with Gary Moore and
the Darkness as well, isn't he? Yeah.
Devin Townsend. He's an amazing player who can play any style you wish for, you know. So it felt, the first time it felt like a band was when it was the four of us, Ken Sandin, Darby Todd, Tommy, and me.
You said that the album never felt like a project. It felt like a band from day one. And the other guys have said that as well. Does that mean that we can expect to see lots of live performances and further material here as well?
Oh, Out of This World is definitely a band. This is so much as a band as you get. I mean, this whole thing, recording the album, has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, it started off with us doing the one and only Key of Hearts concert we did, actually. And by then we already had Darby in the band. So it was actually that, it's quite confusing. It's the Out of This World lineup, but we were playing under the flag Key of Hearts in Germany at the Heat Festival, Ludwigsburg. And during rehearsals, we had 2 days of rehearsals in Top Floor Studios in Gothenburg. And we nailed everything. It was so effortless, just nailing the songs. And we had lots of spare time in the studio. And as so happened, I had some demos with me that I played back for the band, and 3 songs. And those were Twilight, In a Million Years, and Lighting Up My Dark. So before we left the rehearsal place, the studio, we had 3 basic tracks for the new album, you know. And we finished those 3 tracks off, and that was the material that the manager has been shopping deals for us since. But that was also when the band was born, being together, all the 4 of us in the studio, and working on 3 new original songs.
In a Million Years was originally written for the Europe album, Prisoners of Paradise. So how did you come back to dig that up after 40 odd years? I'm surprised when you listen to it now. I mean, it's a great song, but you haven't found and used it before.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, when I wrote it back in 1990, I remember Europe's then manager, Herbie Herbert, who also managed Journey. And I mean, he loved the song. And he really wanted Europe to do it, but for various reasons, it never made the album. So I always had this song in the back of my mind, but I never found the right way of doing it, rearranging it, until I met Tommy, and we did something similar, just fooling around in the studio. I was thinking maybe Tommy's voice would be awesome on this, and he tried it out, and it was just, wow, we can mix it now. it was instantly there, the feeling. So his voice is a big part of that song becoming.
You had a couple of other songs as well, didn't you, written back in those times for the albums that weren't used? Too Far Gone and Can't Fake Love. Did you ever looked at bringing those back into play?
Oh yeah, well I actually did record that on. I changed the name because I rewrote the lyrics, so it's called. It's on the Scaling Up album now. It still goes Too Far Gone in the choruses, but it's called Finger on the Trigger now, actually. But
right.
That's to be found on the Scaling Up album. Yeah, I'm pretty good with recycling stuff. I mean, a good song is a good song is a good song, and
yeah.
But the only there was one other song on the Out of This World album that came from a different direction. I wrote the song with the singer and the drummer of Easy Action for a reunion thing we planned to do that never happened in 2007. And it's called Not Tonight. So that was actually meant for Easy Action. I had the demo and played it back to Tommy in the studio, and he had loads of great ideas. For instance, he came up with this tapping pattern in the verses, which is kind of unusual. And so he gave that song new blood and new life. So that's why it ended up on the album. The rest of it is written during COVID, basically.
You've managed to actually accomplish something which isn't easy to do, which is to master that 80s vibe and that sound and recreate something that sounds fresh and vibrant for today. Yeah,
that's a challenge in itself. I mean, and you need everybody doing their bits and pieces. And I think one thing that also helps it feel a bit more modern or today is I have this, I mean, my electronica synthesizers, I play a lot of keyboards on the album as well, and that together with arrangements takes it into a different room a little bit. I mean, I'm not the same sort of composer as Tempest in Europe, for instance. I have completely different influences. I'm more like of a Todd Rundgren guy, I would say. And I think you hear that on this album. That style is coming out fully.
Tommy Hart, you've got a vocalist here that obviously you've known him for many, many years, who perfectly suits the music. He's one of those rare vocal talents whose live performances as well are as good as what he can put down in the studio. It is a perfect match for your music.
Oh, I think so. It's amazing. And almost instantly when we met, it was like a brotherly love between us. And the only gig we did so far was just as effortless. I mean, normally it takes some time for a guitar player working with a lead singer before they find their places, their spaces on stage, if you want. I mean, it's always about the interaction between the lead guitarist and the guitar player in the melodic rock band, and it's so important. And it just came instantly on the very first gig we did. It's like we never did anything else. And that's a really good sign, when everything just comes automatically. It saves a lot of time for long discussions in what direction the band would go, because there have never been any. We always wanted to go in exactly the same direction. I mean, that's a classic, isn't it? You know, the band split up due to the members' different tastes in music.
Yeah, it's true. Now, tell me, Ron Nevison is involved in the production process. Now, his resume is considerable, to say the least. It's a who's who of some of the great melodic and hard rock of the 80s: Kiss, Survivor, Heart's Fabulous, Bad Animals. And of course, he worked with you in Europe as well. What was it like to team up with him again, and how did you tempt him to get involved?
It was just amazing. I'm so happy. As you said, I mean, he's instrumental for this album. He has a big part of it. The thing is, we had a couple of guys trying out some mixes for the album, and we were simply not happy with the result. So then Tommy suggested, why don't you call Ron? And so it happens I had his number, because I did speak to him not so long ago when I was doing Rock of Ages in Stockholm. I spoke to somebody else in the music business in America who said they talked to him. So I got his number and talked to him. And I just said, Ron, I think I have a project here that you would do really well. I mean, and I started asking about his schedule and all that. And he was very generous and said, okay, just Dropbox me the files for a song of your choice, and I'll make you a mix, no strings attached. If you like it, we'll go for it, you know, or if you like the other guys better, go for that. And of course, he sent us back a mix that completely blew our minds. And the first one he did was Twilight. And which is kind of a complicated song to mix as well, if you think about it. 7 minutes long, and it's a lot of different parts, ups and downs, and he just nailed it. And after that, there were no doubt in our minds that he's the guy to do this. So happy he did the album.
Uncovering those tracks and working with Ron Nevison, did that bring back memories of your first album with Europe back in the day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of memories came back, and between mixes we would talk. We would be online on a streaming service, so I would actually see him on screen, and it was actually like being in his studio, although he was in the state of Washington where he lives, and where he's got the studio in his house. So there was a lot of talking about good old memories and stuff, and the music business in general, and he has just fabulous stories. He was telling me stories about how he was with Ronnie Lane in Mallorca, and he was doing demos. They were doing demos on a cassette deck, believe it or not. They had a mixer board, and they didn't have a reverb or anything, so they put 2 SM57s down in a well to get reverb.
It's brilliant. Everybody, I always remember everybody thought at the time when you arrived with Europe that you were this hot shot, young guy given a big break. Not a lot of people knew about your history prior to that.
Right.
In the 70s and the 80s, when you became involved, it's 40 years, isn't it, this year, with Easy Action. It's a 40-year anniversary.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
We're going to do something of that.
Yeah, 1982, the year you debuted with them. 83, you became the first Swedish band to sign for a major US label, which was Sire, wasn't it? Which was the offshoot of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, so, by Seymour Stein, who signed the Ramones and Madonna and everybody.
That's absolutely right. So what was that like for you back then when you were, you really were young then, talking about being on the same level as the Talking Heads, the Pretenders, the Cure, and Madonna.
Oh man, so many good acts on that label. It was completely unreal. Because back then, Scandinavian rock bands were struggling to sort of reach out in the rest of the world. But we weren't taken seriously. It was mostly the UK and America if you wanted to play hard rock. Nobody took Swedish band seriously, really. And part of the story is, first of all, when we actually signed the deal with Sire, it made the first page on both newspapers in Sweden. That's how big it was, because not even ABBA signed a major US label deal before us. It was really big, and but I don't know. I've met Seymour Stein since at Midem, the fair they have in Nice, but. Back then, when he signed Easy Action, I'm not 100% sure he knew we were Swedish. Because our manager, Sanjay Tandon, who was of Indian heritage, but lived in Sweden and spent most of his time in America, so he spoke perfect English. He met him at Midem, actually, and signed with him in America. So there was no mentioning of Sweden or anything. And we all had stage names. Kee Marcello, Zinnis, and Alex Tyrone, so...
But it's the music. If you listen to the album, even now, which I did again yesterday, some of the great tracks on it, Talk of the Town and Rosie, still got a great fresh feel to it. If you listen to it for the very first time, you would think that was a band straight off the Sunset Strip.
Right. It's actually really weird, but it's amazing, and we were able to create that sort of thing in Sweden. I don't think a lot of American labels had any idea. So I guess good job, Sanjay Tandon, our manager, who managed to sign us. And after that, actually, that's when the Swedish hard rock scene really started to grow. The next band, I think, was Alien, and as number 3 was Europe, who signed with Sony, and then a lot of bands.
It's funny, isn't it? I listened to that as well yesterday, Out of This World, and it was perhaps overlooked due to the album that came before it and that track. But it is a very good album that has perhaps, and the same with Prisoners of Paradise, perhaps travelled time a bit better than the Europe debut album.
Oh, yeah. Actually, if you listen to the fans, there's a big fan community out there, obviously, and a lot of them are voting Out of This World as the best album Europe did. So it's very popular, I know that for sure.
You toured that year as well, didn't you, with Def Leppard in the States for a while in the Hysteria tour. I mean, that must have been some experience.
Oh, fantastic. Playing the Sheds is just an amazing experience, which I wish everybody could do that. It's amazing. I mean, you come there, it's in the summertime, and people are in the morning already are starting to show up with their picnic baskets, and they open a bottle of wine and bring a baguette out, and before you know it, before showtime, there's 40,000 people just waiting for the place is boiling, and you go on stage and it's just fantastic.
Do you remember that gig you did in Mumbai back then? There must have been 50, 60, 70,000 there when Europe went over there.
In Lombardy, no?
In Mumbai.
Mumbai, yeah, in India.
India.
Oh yeah, that was amazing, and that was really weird. It was an amazing gig, and we had 2 support acts. It was a local band, a rock band from Mumbai, and I remember the name was Rock Machine. What a great name! And the second was British, and it was Nazareth.
Oh my God! Well, that is a band,
and that was my favorite band. When I was in school, the Razzmatazz.
Dan McCafferty.
Dan McCafferty, my favorite singer by far, and now it was so silly. Now we were supposed to headline, and I remember even going up to Dan saying, "I'm sorry." I'm your biggest fan. This is not right. And they say, don't worry about it. We're all having fun. He's a great guy.
Just going back then to the band Out of This World, what are the plans then now? The album's out, it's getting good reviews everywhere. Everybody's happy. It's huge in Japan.
Yeah.
So are there live events to be scheduled this year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everything obviously depends on the pandemic situation and, how it's going to affect travels and all that.
Yeah.
It would be a no-brainer to start with a Japanese tour since we were number 1 on the album charts. So, and while we're there in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of territories we played with Europe that both me and Tommy are big in. So we could easily do a Southeast Asian tour. And from there, it wouldn't be a stretch to think that the 4-hour flight to Oceania would also work, Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
Those things are on the horizon, but obviously an extensive EU tour, possibly with another act, like a double bill situation, is in the pipeline.
So what about you yourself then? What's left to achieve for you? I mean, you've done pretty much everything. I mean, you've top charts, played in huge stadiums, you've had number 1 albums, you've had number 1 singles. I mean, you seemingly have done everything. What motivates you now to actually get up and do it all again?
Yeah, I know. It can only go downhill from here. Another thing is, it would be great to I guess it would be great to play some different arenas. I like doing different stuff. It's great that it's a lot of fun that you bring up the Mumbai gig, because that's sort of the stuff I like to do, doing weird, different places. For instance, a couple of years ago, I did the Hornbill Festival up in Nagaland in India, and it was just so amazing. First of all, the travel up the mountain, you know, were no rails at the side of the road and 2 kilometers straight down, and the roads were just horrible. That in itself was very exciting to see if you'd survive that. And then everything surrounding the festival is something I'll never forget. Those are the gigs you never forget. So I would like to do, I mean, for instance, I'm just jamming now, but how about Rock in Rio, if they still do that?
Yeah.
I never did that. And actually, I never played in Brazil at all, or Argentina. That has to be corrected.
And what about collaborations? Do you have any musical heroes that you would love to get together in a recording situation and put something down? I mean, I remember asking the same question to Michael Schenker, and he came out and said, "Yeah, Rod Stewart." I was like, "Really?
You're kidding me! I was gonna say Rod."
No. Seriously.
Yes. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, I saw Rod on Johannes Hovshallen in Stockholm in 1980 or 79. You know, Hot Legs and
Yeah.
You Think I'm Sexy, and it was just amazing. And also once he was actually really close to recording one of my songs that I wrote with Tempest. It's called Homeland. It's on the Prisoners in Paradise album. And he spoke to Thomas Johansson, the CEO of Live Nation back then, and who played it back to him. And he wanted to give it a go. But unfortunately, Tempest said no, which made me absolutely furious. It's the most stupid decision I heard in my entire life. His argument was, you know, we need it for the album, you know. That's a big miss for me, not having Rod playing one of my songs. But now I always love Rod Stewart. He's amazing.
That's quite incredible that you and Michael Schenker both have the same musical hero that you'd love to work with.
It's unheard of, because I mean, besides that, I don't think we have an awful lot in common. I played with a guy, and he's a nice guy. Absolutely, we played on Sardinia. Actually, when Don Airy was on stage that night as well.
Oh, you had Don Airy on the Out of This World album as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you?
And that's amazing. What a keyboard player. That's a real keyboard player. I remember.
Yeah. And lastly, then, I suppose everybody, whenever they talk to you, always asks you this question throughout however long an interview goes. If there were to be a get-together with Europe and Joey was on the phone and said, "Are you going to come back and let's do a tour and an album?" Is it something that still interests you, or is that now firmly, you know, packed away and, yeah, I did it once, I've done it, thanks very much, but not for me anymore?
Yeah, the latter. I would say no, actually. I would be obviously nice and say thank you, but no thank you. That train in my life has passed. I've done that, been there, so to speak. So no, that I wouldn't do that.
Well, that was the track Tonight from Kee Marcello's great new album. And the band, of course, of the same name is called Out of This World. It is out now. And if you're investing or thinking of investing in new music this weekend and want some melodic rock which sounds fresh and vibrant and not dated in any way, then this, and of course Magnum's album, which we looked at in the last show, The Monster Rules, both well worth adding to your collections. Well, that is it. Thanks to Kee Marcello for joining me this week. What a genuinely nice bloke he was, by the way. Coming up next time, I'll be talking, amongst others, to Steve Hackett about what he's got coming up this year. It's a very busy year. It's Genesis Revisited. He takes out on the road Foxtrot out of 50, along with some Hackett highlights. And thanks for listening to me. I'll look forward to your company next time. Till then, from me, Tim Capel. Bye-bye.